We're going to be doing the final assembly of the M58 transmission in this video. We did some modifications to it. We welded a reinforcement plate on it, and because of that we had to reset one of the gear packs bearing preloads, and we also got our M66 quaif differential modified to fit into the M58 case. So let's hop right into it, and we'll get to finally putting this thing together and making sure everything fits and that everything's going to work. So after the support plate is welded onto the outer case, you can see what happens is this bearing race bore actually warps a little bit, warps inwards, and it increases the preload too much, where it makes the input shaft actually hard to turn. So what I'm to do is I'm just gonna have to re-shim it by basically just shaving some thickness off this with the belt sander. Not that big of a deal. But you can also see a little piece of weld got through. So I'm gonna have to clean that up with a Dremel or something. I'm gonna get that cleaned up, and then I'm gonna try taking a little bit off this shim and seeing if I can get the preload close to what it was before. I have a bunch of other transmissions I can check and whatnot by feel, so shouldn't be a problem getting this done. So you can see I got that area cleaned up now, and it is nice and flat, and that little piece of weld that snuck through is gone. And yeah, you can actually feel where it's kind of warped. So right in this area, you can just feel it got pretty warped, probably because that's where the most heat was, where that little piece of weld came through. But it's looking pretty good. And we're gonna get this whole housing cleaned up a little bit, and then we will start working on re-shimming it. Kind of get an idea of how much is actually supported. You know, right here, there's a little hole. So pretty much I'd say, well, actually you can see where he started welding. You can see these marks, the heat penetration marks. So pretty much this whole thing is now supported, and it should be very, very strong. And yeah, let's get this cleaned out, re-shimmed, and just waiting on the quaif, and get this thing thrown together. So I got the preload set pretty perfect on this transmission. I had to take out the 1mm shim, and I had to shave about 0.3 millimeters off the back of the race. And if you can see, this is with just the input shaft in. You can see if we give it a nice spin, basically stays spinning for about a second, which is exactly the same as the stock one, which just has the input shaft in. You can see. This one actually has some in and out play, both of these do. But you can see they're pretty similar. This one might be a little bit tighter, so I might play around with it a little bit more. But I don't know if I want any of that in and out player. Maybe that's just because the cases aren't perfectly torqued down. But I don't know, I might play around with it one more time, try and take a little bit more off, but I think that's gonna be fine. I don't think that's gonna cause any issues. As long as it spins freely enough so that the synchros can do their job, I think we're in good shape. I ended up taking about another 0.05 millimeter off the input shaft bearing to loosen it up just a little bit more, and now it spins like whoosh, and it'll spin for 2 or 3 seconds. It's really good now, but there's no in and out play, so it's still got a little bit of preload. I ended up putting in the other shaft, the shaft that goes here, because that possibly could have been affected by the heat, the shaft, the bearing under here. But it seems still pretty good. I mean, it spins very smoothly. You still see we got good spin. Let me get a good one. So that's all set. So I'm gonna pull all the races out, and I am going to power wash the entire case, paint it, and then we can start doing final assembly on this transmission. Just got to go pick up the quaif, and my shop finished the quaif, but I'm waiting on the clutch to come in so I can take it along with the flywheel to get it zero balanced. So let's get this thing all cleaned up, paint it, and ready for final assembly. And to show you guys what I'm talking about, but you can see it spins real nicely now. If you do this mod, this is what you're aiming for. You want it to spin by hand very easily with the input shaft in, so that way you know that your bearing preload isn't set too tight, and you can see there's no in and out. If we compare it to one of these other transmissions, you can see it's very similar. These have a little bit of in and out. I'm not sure why. Maybe because the case isn't down fully. but you can see that's what you want to shoot for the input shaft when you do this mod, because it warps terribly. I mean, originally there was a 1mm shim under it, and then I took, I think, 0.35 off the back of the race, which should be fine. That's minimal. The race shouldn't compromise the race. So it warps a lot. It warps about 1.3 millimeters or so inwards, but this is all set up now. And like I said in the previous clip, we're gonna go ahead and get everything painted, cleaned up, and ready for final assembly. I have all of the transmission parts over here. I got a new slave cylinder, brand new slave. Let's just take a look at this thing. These things are not cheap. This is like 200 bucks, but you know, this is what you should be doing when you're doing this kind of build, buying all brand new stuff and doing it right the first time, hopefully. Got all the seals, new flywheel bolts, everything. So we're ready to rock and roll on this thing. So yeah, I remember someone in the comments was very concerned that I wasn't gonna paint the transmission, but don't you worry. I got it all painted and power washed. And you can just see this is the bare aluminum. You can just see how nice it looks, all cleaned up and power washed. And of course, everything is painted using the Duplicolor engine enamel. And that stuff always comes out great. Show you the can. It's engine enamel with ceramic. This stuff is awesome. It's very chip resistant, and it can stand up to the high engine bay, heat. So yeah, this looks really good. I painted the inside as well, where the clutch goes, which is kind of pointless because it's just going to get destroyed and covered in clutch dust, but I don't know, might as well. So at this point, I think I'm going to put all the races in, and we can get this thing mostly ready for assembly again. We're just waiting on the quaif differential. It's already been machined. I just got to go pick it up, and just waiting on a couple other things to come in so that I can drop them off when I go pick it up, because it's not exactly the closest machine shop to me. So I'm gonna keep working on this and get this wrapped up real soon. Just gotta throw that differential in, and this thing is ready to rock. I also bought a new engine torque mount. I think Omar suggested getting this one, so shout out to Omar, thank you. It's like 30, 40 bucks. It's got poly bushings. Seems pretty good. So we're gonna run that, and obviously all new bolts and everything, and we can get that installed when we clean up this subframe a bit, which we need to do soon. Get this thing repainted and get some of the oil and grease and grime off it. So continuing to work along, and we'll get this done, wrapped up soon. The bearing races in, and I do want to note that I'm using the bearing races that go with the gear set I'm putting in. So I'm using the bearing races from this M56H from the P1, but you need to use the shims from the M58 case. So I have my M58 case shims over here, and these are going to, and the other one is right there. So we're gonna use all those shims from the M58 case, but we're gonna use the bearing races from the M56 case that matches the gear set, just so the bearing races are matched with the actual gear set. Not for like, part number or anything, just for wear. Probably don't need to do it, but in my opinion, that makes the most sense. So I'm gonna pull the races out of this top case, and we'll put them in that top case with the correct shims. I also got new Timken bearings for the differential. You got 32008 on this side and 32010 on that side. So I'm gonna put those races in now. And obviously there's a shim that goes on the case side. Make sure you use the old shim, or make sure to use the shim from the case, not from the gear set. So gonna get those in real quick, and we already got all these shims in. I tested the input shaft, it's spinning great. And then after these two new races are in, I'm gonna put the rest of the gears in and make sure everything's good to go to finally put the differential in as soon as I get it back from the machine shop. Awesome, that's perfect. It spins nice and smoothly. There's no binding, it's not tight, but it's also not too loose. So that is perfect. Everything is shimmed correctly, and I am very happy that this all worked out by welding the plate on there and still being able to get everything shimmed up. So again, we're gonna wait for that diff. We gotta slap that thing in, throw some sealant on it, put all the seals in, she's done, ready to go. So I got my rear transmission mount prototype in. It is a 2.5D design. I got it cut out of stainless steel. and it fits really good. I got everything tacked up, so I'm gonna take it off to my local welder and he's gonna weld it with some 304 rod. And I mocked up the angle gear just to kind of show you what things are looking like, but it looks so cool. It's quite deceiving that the angle gear is actually angled a little bit, but it's just because the transmission's angled, because the engine actually sits on an 11-degree angle in the engine bay. Let's just do a quick little walk around. You can see plenty of room to get the bolts in and everything, and pretty happy with this. I ordered the official ARP studs I'm going to be using and all the bolts for the main angle gear case, and this thing just looks so cool. There's the welded reinforcement, so hopefully this thing can take some power. Guess we'll see. And of course we got the big 23 spline input shaft. Got the transmission mount back from welding and it came out really good. There were a couple spots where it was a little messy, but the welder said that was because of just some of my tacks might have got a little dirty, but hey, it's structural and that thing is in there. It's bolted on perfectly, bolted onto the mount perfectly. You can see there's a little bit of gap. That's actually because there's a little, you can see that right there where it actually sits above the mount a little bit. So that fits perfect. We're not gonna be using these mounts. I got poly mounts, they actually came in. They're in the box over there. So we might throw those on, or just the back one on to test it, but the engine is sitting perfect, perfectly level. It looks really nice. And I want to throw the angle gear on and see what kind of clearance we're working with here. It should be pretty good. But yeah, it's definitely perfectly level. You can see, looks really good. So I'm gonna call this mount a success so far. I want to throw the turbo manifold on, and I want to make sure the turbo clears all this, which I know it should because of my 3D prototype. I want to throw the angle gear in and just start playing around with a couple things because we got to start building our oil drain real soon. So I want to get that hopefully done this weekend and get that off the welding. I have the flange. I have a couple different flanges. I have some aluminum 1-inch tube I bought, and we're probably gonna have a straight fitting come off here, and then we'll probably 90 over and then 90 over again and up into the turbo. But that's for another clip when we start playing around with that, but pretty happy with how this mount came out. Got the turbo on. Also plenty of clearance down here still. So our mount's definitely in the perfect spot. You can see I can get my full fingers in there, probably a little bit more. We're gonna have solid or poly mounts anyway, so I'm not worried about this flexing down and hitting that really at all. And this is where we gotta start working on our turbo drain. We don't have a whole lot of room. Got about, let's see how much room we actually have, because I've been wanting to take this measurement for a while now. So, let's see, just get my gauge out. We got about a decent amount actually. So from the flange to the top of the angle gear, we have 60 millimeters, so a little more than 2 inches, about almost 2.5 inches. So that's a good amount of room. Definitely can't fit AN lines in there. Already tried that. So we are gonna try fitting, some hard lines, which I'll show a little bit of that later, but pretty happy with the transmission mount fitment, angle gear, turbo. I think everything's gonna work really well, and we got plenty of clearance over here with the bell housing and the lines over here. And the angle gear slid right on. Usually it hits those power steering lines down there, but it actually cleared those because I think this mount makes it sit just a tad higher than the side mount over here on the all-wheel drive model. So really happy with this, and plenty of clearance for our intake tube and everything. And that turbo is just wanting to get going already. And we also put a new fitting back here so that I can still run my breather line. Before I had a straight fitting and it was hitting the angle gear. So now we have a 45, and then we're gonna 90 off that and come back over here and just be able to reuse this same line right here. Broke out the level because I actually went to see how level it is, and it's perfectly level. So that mount is perfect. It's not too high, so it's not gonna make the engine like lean at all. And you can see it's pretty level, really level. Level enough that you're not gonna be able to tell a difference. So definitely gonna be selling these. I'm just gonna do a big parts drop at the end with everything I've designed once this thing's up and running, because I just don't have the time or the energy to put this stuff into production yet. But this stuff's gonna be really affordable. Like the mounts, the brackets, the angle gear is even gonna be really affordable. So we'll get to that when the time comes. You guys know me, I like to test everything and put it through my paces before I actually sell it. And you guys know I'm gonna test it right, because if we're going this far, we're gonna make sure it's tested right. Messing around with the oil drain. So this is 1 inch outer diameter, and it is I think it's 1.5 inch centerline radius. And you can see it's gonna be tight, but I mean, we might be able to make something work. You can see it just barely doesn't fit going that way. So I can continue taking some material off here to hopefully shorten this a little bit and then maybe give me some room. Or it fits really good going this way because of this radius here. So what we could do is maybe come out like this way or something and then wrap around the turbo here and then shoot like right around here and then into there. But I don't know, that's a long way for the oil to travel, and it might not keep good flow. So I'm gonna keep playing around with it a little bit, and we'll see if we can figure something out. I think I'm just gonna continue to keep taking material off of here, maybe take like another 1/4 inch or something, 1/8 of an inch, and just try and make it work, like going this way. And then 90 over, and then go into here. I think we're gonna be able to make it work. Definitely gonna have to put the drain on and then put the manifold on. If you put the angle gear in from the top, you actually have to put the angle gear in, then the manifold. You can't get the angle gear in with the manifold on. So we're gonna keep playing around with it. I think I'm gonna put the side cover on too, so that we're working with this, you know, accurately, and we'll see what we can come up with. The mounts I was talking about, and they fit absolutely perfect. These things are beautiful. I got these from Retro Turbo. They are really nice and stiff and solid. I think these are really gonna tighten up the engine flex quite a bit, because if you saw in some of our dyno videos, we had a decent amount of engine flex. So we got another poly mount over here. I still have the stock rubber one in over here, and we also bought a new poly mount for the lower transmission torque mount. It's over here. I think this is like Sweden Pro Parts. It's a pretty nice little mount. We also got a poly upper torque mount. So we got a good amount of poly mounts on the engine. I'm okay with putting poly mounts on the engine because that's really what needs it most, because this thing's gonna be torquing and flexing like crazy. But I went with all OEM on the rear subframe because I think that's what's gonna handle best. So pretty happy with these. Got them mocked out my transmission mount, and pretty happy with how those turned out, and I think they're gonna work great. And if they cause a lot of vibrations, oh well. I mean, this is a race car, street car. It's not really a daily driver, so I'm not too concerned. Working on getting those front differential bearings pushed on. Again, always using our trusty press and pull sleeve socket set, and these should press on real nice and easily. There we go. That one is pressed on, so we're gonna flip it around and do the other side, and we can get this thing test fitted. We also got the diff back from machining. You can see they actually machined this down in thickness so that it matched the stock differential in thickness here. So I'll grab my mic real quick and we'll check it out. So let's check the flange real quick, see what we got measurement wise. So here you can see we got about 9.96. Should be around like 9.96 to 10. And here you can see we have 9.95, 9.96. So these two are exactly the same thickness here now. The quaif comes a little bit thicker. This is the M56 quaif, by the way. And once you get that machine down, they put a radius back in here and it'll fit the ring gear real nicely. So let's flip this over, get the other bearing put on, and we are ready to get this trans back together. I got a couple pieces over there, a couple pieces over here. We can test fit that up pretty soon and get that all sealed up and ready to go. Without the gears, and it spins great. I got all the new bearings on, the new races. So this spins great, no problem. Now the only reason why we had to remove some material from here is so that way the ring gear sits in the correct spot. Because on the M56 quaif, it's a little bit thicker, so that moves the ring gear down a little bit. So it might not make perfect contact with the teeth. There might be a little spot left at the top where it doesn't make contact. So machining this doesn't necessarily change the position of the actual differential inside of the casing. So it's not gonna affect like bearing preload or any of those dimensions. It's simply just to make sure that the ring gear is perfectly meshed with, I guess, the lay shaft. And all that's gonna be good. So we can throw these gears in, we can get this thing sealed up, we can put all new seals on it, and we should be ready to rock. We have all the seals. We're gonna switch over to the 850 style levers for the shift mechanism, and everything's gonna be nice and perfect and happy there. So really happy with how this came out. Differential fits great. The ring gear is gonna be in the perfect spot, and we'll check that again next, and we'll throw in the ring gear and the gears and make sure everything's good. So I'm gonna do a mock-up with all the gears in and do a test fit and spin everything and make sure it's all good. I only put 2 bolts in the diff for now because we're not gonna be doing the final assembly of this video. And by final assembly, I mean torquing these bolts down and putting the sealant on it and torquing the case. What we're gonna do is we're gonna throw the case on, we're gonna torque all the bolts to 20 pound-feet, and we're just gonna make sure everything spins free and nicely. The reason why I am not gonna be doing the final assembly of this video, and again, the final assembly is literally just putting a bead of silicone around the edge, is because I'm probably gonna be using the bell housing a lot to set up the clutch, and I don't wanna be lifting this heavy transmission dozens of times while I test fit everything on the engine. So I'm gonna do a test fit, take everything back out, and then that way I can just use the bell housing to continue to mock up some stuff. But we might as well get everything checked and finalized, and so that you guys know basically that this transmission is going to be good to go. So we got all of our gear packs in, we got all of our shift forks in. Again, if you're putting the P1 M56H gear set in here, you want to use the M58 shift mechanism and also this M58 lever right here, because the M56 one from the P1 transmission doesn't fit for some reason. So we got everything in, let's slap the case on, let's torque the bolts down, make sure it shifts through all the gears, and make sure they all spin nice and freely. So we got everything all torqued down. You can see our input shaft is still spinning real nicely with the transmission in neutral, and we want that so that the engine speed and wheel speed can match each other. And we're gonna try shifting through all of the gears now. So we're gonna start with, this is first. See, it spins. It's a little bit tight because there's no oil in the transmission and none of the bearings are really lubed up yet. See, it spins no problem. So that's 1 and 2. And we'll get 3 and 4. You can see it's a little tight. I'm trying to get a good grip on it, but they spin. Now we're gonna do 5 and reverse. Trying to shift these with some screwdrivers, so it's not the easiest. This is reverse. It's spinning, and then 5th's probably going to be a little hard to spin by hand, but I'll give it a try anyway. And you can see 5th is spinning. A little tight, but I think that's just because there's no oil in it. I might pull it out and double check everything, but I think everything's looking pretty good. This is with all the bolts torqued down. So again, we'll do the final install a little bit later when I'm done mocking up stuff with the bell housing. So I took it apart again, and I took out the final drive, and then I went through all the gears and it spun way easier. So I think it's just the gear ratios. I mean, obviously 5th gear is going to be a lot harder to spin than 1st gear. So no problems. This thing is ready to rock. I am very confident everything is set up correctly. So when I did have the final drive out and the diff, all the gears spun very easily by hand. I mean, you can still spin them no problem by hand with the final drive in. It's just obviously as you go up in the gears, it gets harder. So not a problem there. I mean, if we try and see if I can shift into first with one hand. I don't think I can, but I can try. Let's see. No, I'm not gonna be able to shift into first with one hand, but I mean, this is 3rd or 4th. It spins no problem. So if it's spinning pretty easily in 3rd and 4th, we're not gonna have a problem. I think I'm just overthinking things and forgetting that as you go up in the gears, it takes, you know, it's harder to spin the input shaft. Doi. So for the sake of transparency and the sake of, holy crap, I have bad OCD, I pulled the final drive out again because I want to show you guys exactly what I'm talking about with how it spins quite a bit easier with the final drive removed, which obviously makes sense because there is no final reduction going on. So we got, there's our thing. So we're in neutral, spinning real good. We're gonna go into, I think this is gonna be, this is 1st or 2nd. This is 1st or 2nd again. That's 2nd because it's a little bit harder to spin. So that's good. Now we got, this is 4th. This is 3rd. And then we're gonna go try 5th in reverse. This is either 5th or reverse. Again, no problems. And no problems. So everything is spinning very freely with both the final drive in and the final drive out and shifting through all the gears. I am 100% confident this thing is ready to go. And it shifts into all the gears. It spins through them all, no problems. And so now we just got to pull it all apart. I'm going to continue to mock up the bell housing a little bit with some of the other stuff. And then we got to get the magnet in there and seal it up and finalize everything. And this thing's going to be ready to go. So that's going to wrap up this video, guys. We got the transmission all ready to go. We just need to do the final assembly on it, like I already said. Put the magnet in it, just clean everything up, oil it, and put the bead silicone on it and torque everything to 20 foot-pounds, and also torque the ring gear on the coif. So I'm gonna wait to do that because, like I said, I need to still use the bell housing for a couple more things, but we got a really cool video of the clutch coming up soon. I got that in. It's off at the machine shop getting balanced right now. They're just checking the balance. It looks like it already came pre-balanced, but got the motor off the stand. Only thing left to do on the motor is I want to clean up the alternator, and then I need to do the final torquing of the whole accessory bracket, and that's all good. Everything else is good on the motor. We're going to power wash and clean the subframe, maybe repaint it. We're going to put our poly engine mounts on, get those permanently in, and next up, we're going to finish up this rear because I did get some new bushings for the rear hubs. These bushings are no longer available, and you can't get any aftermarket ones anymore. So I got these polyurethane ones. These just go on the hub. These are for the upper control arm. So the upper control arm bushings, they press into here. So we'll press those in. We already got new wheel bearings in. Then once these are in, we can put in the backing plates. We can get the hubs in, and we'll be good to go on that rear. I have everything to finish putting this rear together, so that should go together real quick. And either this is going to be the next video or the clutch, and also the angle gear I'm going to be putting together soon too. I took one of the shims to the machine shop so they could shave it down to a millimeter, so that way I only have to fine tune it on the belt sander instead of taking 4 hours to fully shim it on the belt sander, because that sucks. So they're going to surface grind that, and like I said, guys, we're going to be moving real fast here soon, waiting on a couple things from Volvo, and hopefully we can get this engine in and get that started maybe. while we're still finishing up the subframe, or get the subframe completely in and get the whole fuel system all figured out. It's going to be real easy doing the fuel system. I bought some more nylon hose. We just got to make a couple new lines to the surge tank and whatnot. Should be real easy. So stay tuned, guys. We're going to have a lot more cool content coming up soon, and hopefully get this thing running and driving.